changes the way we think and the way that we understand each other as human beings. And so it's important for the language to come back here. This talks about Mexico, how Mexico lost the land, right? So Spain stole the land, calling dibs first, right? And then Mexico stole the land by taking the land and giving it out to gentry. My ancestors went from being slaves on the missions to being slaves on these big ranchos in the Bay Area, big Mexican ranchos. And I'm beginning to talk about this more in public, and I get people to come up to me and they talk about, oh, I live across the street from someone's family who got a Mexican land grant, and I'd like to find out more information, right? So we're beginning to hear this because we start talking about it, and people start thinking about, oh, well, maybe my family got a grant, or maybe I know somebody that got a grant, or maybe I'm working someplace and that originally that was a grant, right? And so what does that grant mean? It doesn't mean anything. But what happened was that Mexico had this land, they stole it for a second time, right? And then America decided they wanted this land, right? And the way they did, they had a war with Mexico, the Mexican-American War. And I just like speak in real general terms about this stuff. It's real easy to figure this stuff out. They took this land, they had a war, and then at the end of this war, they signed this treaty, right? An agreement between two sovereign nations. But in this treaty, it's a very famous treaty. It's the Treaty of Guadalupe de Hidalgo. And in that treaty, there's a sentence or so inside of there that says, a portion of the land is supposed to go back to the natives of the land, right? Well, America signed that treaty, and like all the other treaties that it signed, it went back on its word. And it didn't actually create any land space for Native people. The state of California was created, and in the creation of the state of California, it created laws that made it illegal to be Indian in California, right? Some of the very first laws that this state is created on is the creation of laws that made it illegal to be Indian, right? And that was also backed by the federal government by giving bond money to the state at $1.7 million. So people, we talk about the gold rush and people coming here looking for this stuff, having this vision of making millions and millions of dollars. Well, Native people knew that this gold was in the ground, but Native people didn't give a crap about it. They thought it wasn't for any use. And so they left it in the ground, right? But people came here with this gold fever, looking for this substance, right? And so when that happened, horrible things happened. But not everybody could find gold, but they could find Indians. And on Sundays, sometimes they would gather up and they would get on horses and they would chase down Native people. And they would kill them, $5 a head and 25 cents an ear. And that went on for a long time. And so the dispossession of land was also people fleeing for their lives. My ancestors, part of that, right? The ancestors of those that are in Northern California fleeing for their lives. Children being grabbed up by people and selling them. $300 for a little girl, $80 for a boy. By going into villages and killing off the adults. And then taking apart families. So the United States has been taking kids away from their families for a long time, right? And so this made a very big disruption in Native culture and communities, right? And people are trying to get back from that whole thing. So we got stolen again, right? So it's like third time, right? Mexico wins the war, stolen for the third time. It was massive. So it was $1.4 million that California spent doing this kind of thing. And so you think about that. I grew up here in Lisjan, in Ohlone, my whole life. I went to school here. I raised my kids here, my grandchildren. Some of them live here. Some of them live in Hayward. But we've also always lived in our own original territory. And finding out this history, going to school, made me really angry, right? Made me angry because there was nobody telling our story anywhere. And no one knew about Ohlone people except that you had to build these missions when you're in 4th grade. And even as my kids went to school in the Oakland Public School District, they also were supposed to be making these missions. So I would write these angry letters to their teachers and say, to hell, my kid's not going to make a mission. Our people die building those missions, right? They can build it.